Okay, this is video number 1 in preparation for our evolution unit test. So the first thing that we did is we talked about what is a living thing. And so we defined some of the characteristics of living things, like they're made of cells. They have to be able to grow and develop, respond to stimuli, reproduce. They have to be able to adapt to their environment, maintain homeostasis, and they exhibit metabolism. That is, they take in and use energy. So that was the first thing that we did, is we defined what is alive, or what is life. And then what we kind of focused on is this idea that all life forms are related. And so then we looked at the 3 domains of life, and you should have this handout. The 3 domains of life include the bacteria and the archaebacteria and the eukarya. So we basically analyzed this diagram, and we saw that there was a common ancestor for all of the organisms, and there was immediately a branch. And you can see that the bacteria that we think of, as everyday bacteria causing disease, dirty, gross, or even the kind in our yogurt, they're on their own separate branch. And the other thing we can see is that the archaebacteria, which are those that live in the most extreme of environments, like highly acidic environments or highly alkaline, highly salty, methane-rich, or very, very hot environments, that they're actually on the same branch as all eukaryotes, those organisms that have a nucleus with many membrane-bound organelles, such as protists, plants, animals, and fungi. So the relationship of these 2 groups on this cladogram shows that these 2 groups share a more recent common ancestor right here at the node, making the archaebacteria and the eukarya more closely related to each other than either one is to the bacteria. And the reason is the most recent common ancestor for all of those groups is here at the node. And remember, time would be progressing this way. So this is a more recent common ancestor than this one, and that was the relationship there. We also reviewed the characteristics of any prokaryote, including bacteria and archaebacteria, how they have no nucleus, very few organelles. They're very, very simple, very primitive, and their organelles are not covered by a protective membrane. If you remember, we had to look at this diagram and come up with some basic ideas, like, interpretations, things that you could get just by looking at the diagram. And so things that we got from this diagram is all living things come from a common ancestor. We've already gone over number 2. And number 3 shows that the archaebacteria evolved before the eukaryotes, and you can tell that by the placement on the cladogram. We then went on to talk about the evidence that shows the relatedness of all 3 domains. And so when we look at the bacteria and the archaebacteria and the eukaryotes, all of them carry their genetic information in the same way, in the form of DNA and RNA. And all of those organisms pass on their genetic information via the same processes: replication, transcription, and translation. All organisms within their DNA share the same genetic code, ATCG, and all organisms convert glucose to ATP in glycolysis. It's a common metabolic process. So again, all organisms in all 3 domains share all of these things, and so that indicates common ancestry for all organisms. We then moved on to talk about how life developed on Earth according to scientists. We discussed the Big Bang Theory, which describes the origin of the universe, and this massive explosion supposedly occurred 15 billion years ago. After billions of years, particles came back together to form the Earth, and Earth's approximate age is 4.6 billion years old. From there, it took about another billion years for the first organisms to form. We say this because the earliest fossils that we have are 3.5 billion years old. They are like bacteria, and so at this point we're saying the first organisms were bacteria-like creatures. Many models have been used to describe the origin of life. That would include meteorites, which brought life to Earth, clay templates, and the one we care about the most for the AP exam is the organic soup model, proposed by were actually tested by Miller and Urey in the 1952. So again, these guys wanted to even see if it was feasible for life to develop on Earth using this organic soup model, which basically stated that in the air there were poisonous gases like ammonia and methane, and there was no oxygen, plenty of CO2, plenty of water vapor, hot steamy seas, remnants of the Big Bang explosion, and lightning storms, which would release electrical sparks. So Miller and Urey ran an experiment. You can see this setup. It was done in a laboratory. They put heated water in a beaker. They put gases I think were in the early environment in the tube, and they had electrodes to simulate the lightning. After just a few weeks, the precursors to amino acids and nucleotides were present in the beaker, which formerly held just heated water. And so the point of this experiment was that it could have happened this way. It provides support for the organic soup model.